All right.
Okay, y'all, I'm sorry.
No, no, no. You had to
Let's
get the, we're
go.
trying to get the energy up. Let's,
Okay, so we ready for the episode? We
I
ready.
think that we are. So let's just,
Welcome to the Goddess-ity podcast, where women come together and have the audacity to tell their truths. Are you choosing to live out loud while honoring the divine within? Well, ladies, this is your movement. Join Akili, April, Juanita, and Linda as they dive deep into topics like self-love, spirituality, and comedic wisdom. We call those the foundations of goddess life. Tap in with the goddesses every week to be inspired, uplifted, and empowered.
Hello, family. Thank you so much for joining us today for our next episode. And this is going to be another fabulous one. Today, we're going to be discussing navigating parent child relationships with self love and divinity. I am Goddess Juanita, and I would like to introduce you to the other goddesses. We have Goddess Linda, which will be leading the segment on parental impact on children. She'll be sharing some of the motivations, the challenges, and the outcomes from a parent's viewpoint. Next, we have Goddess Akili, and she's going to be leading us in the segment on child's response to parenting. She's going to be talking to us about some insights on growth and understanding. She's also going to be bringing in a little bit of the comedic wisdom that we talked about in previous episodes. And last but definitely not least is Goddess April. She's going to be bridging the gap for us. She's going to be talking about how all of these relationships work together. And she's going to be giving us a story and really offering us some communication techniques that will help us as we navigate through these relationships. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Goddess Akili. I'm sorry, Goddess Linda.
Well, hello and thank you. I'm so glad to be
It's
here.
okay.
So I want to share with you some of my insights and wisdoms and challenges and lessons learned through my own parental impact on my children. And it really all started prior to that when I was a child and what was mirrored for me and what I observed. One thing that I did realize when I was an adult is how much anger and resentment that I had towards my own mom. And the reason I respected her, I loved her. However, I did realize that, well, let me take that part back about respecting her. I had lost respect for her. And as a result, in how I talked to her, um, it wasn't always the best, or at least my thoughts weren't always the best. But how that came about is my father was murdered when I was just 6 years old. My mom never remarried. So her sister stepped in and had a hand in raising us, and she did an awesome job. And I thank her for that. And it was as a result of what my aunt was able to do for us and provide for us. And it was extremely different from what my mom's ability to do. And my mom was extremely smart, a very smart woman. But I just always thought that, people walked over her and she just kind of, sat back and just let things happen. And I do recall saying to myself that when I have a family, there are certain things that I was not going to allow. And as a result, when I did become a parent, I was so focused on the doing, the act. I wanted to ensure that my children had a roof over their head, they had clothes on their backs, they had food. So, as far as doing extra activities, that didn't seem like a necessity because that also came out from that sense of lack. So, I never thought that we were able to afford those things. And when we were able, my husband and I at that time were able to do those things. Again, it was still a matter for me. it was just always about doing and learning. You have to be learning something in this experience, learning. So I look back on some of my kids' experiences, and it saddens me that I didn't allow them to just have fun and be. And so as I reflect on other parts of their upbringing by me, by this time, is years later, I had divorced. And so as a result of the divorce, I had thought I was still doing a good job of being their parent, but I had actually checked out. I was physically there, but emotionally, I was not there. I would go to my room trying to hide my sadness, my just depression and anxiety from them. But I also, again, I thought that I was doing an excellent job because they still had a roof over their head. They still have clothes on their backs. They still had food to eat. So their basic needs were still being met. And now I have 3 children. So my 2 oldest, I would consider us close, but I would want us to be a lot closer. And meaning I would want my sons to call me more often, and let's just have a conversation, or even if it's just texting me, and that gets me to questioning, okay, what is it that I've done, or how can I um uh bridge that gap? How can I shorten that? And when I think about it, they are just modeling what I modeled to them. I was there for them to get their basic needs done. And I would, we would have some fun times and things of that nature. But as far as just sitting around talking, chit-chatting, just cutting up, no, I was very serious. I was a serious child due to my upbringing, trying to create some stability in my life, and therefore trying to pass that on to my children. So as far as stability and that sense of safety, they have that. That's a very firm foundation for them. But as far as just sitting back and relax and cutting loose, I think that they have that, but they have that with others and not necessarily with me to the degree that I would like. Because we are able to have conversations. I can call them, things of that nature. I just want more of it. And I realized that my parenting wasn't always on par, and the divorce, to a degree, I blamed my ex-husband as to anything that was going on with the children, because he just checked out. He just dropped everybody, you know. But the truth of the matter is that I had a role to play in how, especially my daughter, because there is a big gap between her and her older brothers, in how she started processing things. And if I could do it over, that would be something that I would change in putting forth more of an effort of how I'm how I'm seeing myself in the situation, and giving to myself. And again, I'm learning to show myself grace, because again, I was only modeling. Sometimes I wasn't even modeling what I saw. I just tried to model different from what I had or didn't have. And this is what I thought it looked like.
Yeah.
My oldest son, his wife, I'm so appreciative of her, because she knows how to have fun. And she knows how to just, do those silly things with the kids and make everything special, and even my mind still be like, oh, that's a waste of money. But it's like, it's not about the money, it's the experience that she's creating, and that makes those children feel special, those children being my grandchildren, so she's teaching me to just, relax and let go and let be. And
Yeah.
I'm very thankful to her for that. And that's the impact that my upbringing had on my parenting. And I can say this is that through my spiritual awakening and learning to love myself and giving myself that self-love, it brought about that awareness of where I was lacking, and it just started to change things. So that's what I would wanted to share about, the parental impact on children. And I am going to turn this platform, the microphone, over to Miss Goddess-ity.
Well, thank you for the baton pass, Goddess Linda, and I appreciate you sharing all of that. Every time I hear you speak, I just learn more things about you. And that's one of the things actually about all of the goddesses is as much as we share with each other on a regular basis, it's like when we get into these spaces of really sharing our stories, you hear it and you just learn something new about that person. I love that we're creating such a vulnerable space where we can open up and give those details because, you know, this is some intimate stuff out here.
Yes.
So, but you say a lot of stuff that resonates with me that I'll definitely speak on here in just a little bit. But I want to talk about the flip side of that coin, which is, how these relationships that we have, when we're younger with a core group of people, impact what goes on from the child's perspective, right? Um, And when I think back to one of my earliest memories, it's incredible how so many times we remember our more, crisis covered situations as opposed to things that may have been extremely joyful or things that were extremely positive. But one of the most pivotal moments for me was when I was 5 years old. And I remember my parents being in some sort of argument. Um, you know, at the end of the argument, my mother proceeded to, say, hey, I'm out of here. She asked me if I was going to go with her. She was actually going to move to another state. And she asked me when I was 5 years old, do you want to come with me or do you want to stay here with your father? And I said, no, ma'am, I will stay here with my father. Thank you kindly. And she left and went on about her business. Now, from my perspective at the time, I just felt like, okay, this person just left. It was a fairly important person in my life, but I couldn't make the decision to go with her because it felt like too much of an upheaval. I absolutely was not going to leave my father. At 5 years old, I don't remember feeling like, oh, you have this extended family group and all these friends and you've been in school. None of that was important to me, but I knew I wasn't going to leave my father. I knew I wasn't going to shift what I knew as the only stability to go do something that represented instability with her. And at 5 years old, I can't even believe that all of that was actually going through my mind. I'm like, no, this doesn't feel quite right. Um, and looking back on it now that I know so much more about both of my parents, right? Here we are 40 years later. I understand that my mother didn't feel like she had a better choice, right? She had been in a situation where she had grown up with so many other people controlling her, but she was very resourceful at a very young age. I mean, she was working when she was 13 years old and had a car and an apartment for some reason, right? So when she got to the age of having me at, 18, 19 years old, she decided, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to become an engineer. I don't want people to continue to have a say so over my existence. I don't care if they're, parents. I don't care if they're men. I don't care who it is. I want to be able to do what I want to do. And when she went to school and, she became an engineer, she got a very prominent job fixing computers, and she wanted to move to California. So that's what she chose to do. And I think that as young as she was, she just felt like, hey, I gave this child a choice. I don't want her to be unhappy. If her choice is to stay with her father, then I want to be able to grant her that option, right? Now, I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I mean, for a lot of mothers, I know that would be challenging to look at Juanita. She just shook her head. No, it would be challenging to make that decision to say, I'm not going to be with my children. But at the same time, that may have a lot to do with the fact that I was just so very connected to my father. Maybe that's why I felt as strong of a connection with him as I did, right? It's hard to say. Um, I definitely understand a lot more today about the sacrifices that she felt like she had to make for me to even be here. She wanted to accomplish a lot in life. And I do feel like because of the childhood that she had, she just didn't want a lot of that to stand in the way. She wanted to be able to control her own future and her destiny. And I don't think even her children um, were going to stand in the way of that. Um, Unfortunately, being able to have conversations with her as an adult, not necessarily to understand um, uh, this particular event, right? But to just kind of understand more about our relationship as a whole, since I was raised by my father. Um, I definitely got to learn more about her as a woman, which I think is key. Me understanding who she was before she was my mother, who she is outside of that role or title as my mother, gave me the ability to have empathy for a lot of the things that she was going through, a lot of the things that she would continue to go through as she, made the choice to, I don't want to say run away from her own childhood, but in essence, she was trying to heal from her own childhood, but more so doing it through action as opposed to the internal work and healing from the wounds that were here. So I think a lot of times the action was very knee jerk or um, encased in fear. So it wasn't always um, something that may have been in her best interest. Um, but it it's again allowed me to understand a lot about her. And even though we aren't able to have conversations to this day, just because I don't agree with a lot of the decisions that she made doesn't mean that that puts me in a position where I have like disdain because I disagree. I can understand that she made some decisions, and I can agree with the fact that, she did what she did. And even though I disagree with it, because I'm looking at it from a parent's perspective, she did the best she could with what she had. And when people used to tell me that, that used to piss me off because I didn't understand what that meant. I'm like, no, she didn't. How? How did she do the best she could with what she had? And they're like, because if she knew better, she do better. I'm like, how do you know? Maybe she just chose to do what was in whatever best interest that she had, and she just kept it moving. But, through the years of gaining wisdom, through really having to understand some things comedically, metaphysically, I've been able to look at those things in a different way, right? When we say that somebody is doing the best they could with what they have, I think that what they mean by that is that nobody would wake up with the choice to just do it badly. Right? Today, I'm just going to screw this parenting thing up. Today I'm just gonna just suck as a mom. This is my plan, right? In the midst of you doing it, I think you believe that this is the best outcome, or you are so emotionally charged by a lot of things, even when that little voice of reason comes in and says, you might want to rethink this. You're like, no, nope. I'm not going to let you win. I am going to go do what I need to do because I'm tired of feeling like this, right? Or something else needs to happen, and you FAFO, right? I always say that you gonna fuck around and find out one way or the you gonna FAFO at some point, if you didn't make the decision that was going to benefit you the most. Yeah. I do think that forgiveness is one of those things that, really has to be encouraged in these spaces. But I think that forgiveness is also a challenge. I try to look at that through, again, the eyes of comedic wisdom. And I think in my understanding of forgiveness today, it means not or letting go of the idea that you wish the past were different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? It's like there's no way for it to be different. So it's almost like you pushing against a brick wall, right? You're not going to move that thing. Yeah. So during the process of you pushing against it, all you are doing is stressing yourself out. All you are doing is tiring yourself out, right? It's not in your best interest to do that. So number one, you're in a space where you need to let go of the idea that you wish something could be differently or be different. And then the second thing I think about with forgiveness, which was really a challenge for me, is that you have to forgive yourself. And this is one of the things I learned in KCL. You have to forgive yourself for feeling like you allowed yourself to be duped. Remember when we talked about that? Now, in a child parent relationship, I feel like that's a little challenging because I think there is a trust factor here that, hey, this person, my parent, has my best interest at heart. Yeah. There's no way that I'm being punked right now. There's no way that I'm being duped. I'm just a child. I'm just out here living my best life. But I think that that's where the wound comes in, is almost the expectation that this person is your parent and they're going to be able to pull this parenting thing off without a bunch of flaws, right? And because you have that view, you have that expectation, you have that standard that you've set for them, you have to forgive yourself when they don't live up to it, right? And you have to forgive yourself for setting that expectation and assuming that they would, right? Because there's just no way for you to be able to, again, know as a child what kind of situation that you're in. So I've talked a little bit about encouraging, forgiveness and, I keep referring back to Kemetic wisdom and even talking about KCL. So I want to, just speak briefly about how this makes me think about Kemetic wisdom. Now, I've mentioned previously, the law of Ma'at when we talk about harmony and balance and, how ancient Cometians knew that this was going to be a principle that governed society. And there was a number of different affirmations and laws, if you will, that you would recite during the day before you got your day started to get you in the right mindset. And then when you came home in the evening, you were supposed to say, okay, these are things that I did not do, right? So again, more of a system of self-governance, but something that made you realize that there needed to be balance and harmony amongst the society. We can look at the child parent relationship like that a little bit, right? We want to create that balance and that harmony. But I want to take it even deeper than that. I want to take it deeper into just African spirituality and the understanding that we have, which is that the soul is energy and it never dies, it never ceases to exist. And before you incarnate into a human experience, which you will have many of, before you incarnate into a human experience, you make a choice about what types of experiences you want to have. Okay, you make a decision about who is going to play these roles in your life movie, if you will. So you choose your parents because those are going to be the people that act and behave in certain ways that allow you to experience this thing that you wanted to experience. Right. So with that being said, I think about the fact that I chose my father, I chose my mother. They are doing what they have contracted with me to do in this lifetime so that I could become who Akili is. And I'm still in the process of becoming, right? So in understanding that, that also gives me not always a sense of peace in the midst of it happening, but the ability to look back on it again from a very metaphysical way and realize that every person in your life, as far as I'm concerned, is an assignment, right? So your mother, your father, it doesn't matter, my children, everybody I'm learning something from. And so much of my response and what I choose to do after we're in these situations, that's all on me. I have the ability to control all of that. And I'm a big fan of controlling the controllables. So with that, that's my experience when I think about a child's response to parenting. So I'm going to hand the baton off to Goddess April now, who's going to talk to us about bridging this gap.
I reached the wrong way. Thank you, Goddess. Appreciate
Okay, and on my screen, that was the wrong way. Okay, so that's what's hilarious about it. It's all good. It's all good. It worked either way.
Well, I appreciate it either way. Okay, I have the baton. Thank you so much, Goddess. No, I think very powerful stories that both you and Goddess Linda have shared in order to, get us to look at these two different perspectives. And I'm gonna say dual as opposed to like they're counteracting each other or in conflict with each other, although it can feel that way. Right. And it's really just because of these unique challenges that come along with these two unique roles, right? There's this generational gap being born in these different eras. They come with these social influences and pressures, but then also just the responsibilities and the you know well, especially as a parent, right? Being solely responsible for this child. But then there's also challenges that children have as well, right? Being a child playing that role and what's expected of you, right? And so I guess the question is, how do we bridge the gap, right? So I actually thought of a personal experience of my own that I think may highlight this a little bit, where I was put in a situation where I needed to figure that out. Okay. So I, of course, being the parent at this time, I was a young parent, having my child at 15 years old, but being very determined to maintain that position as parent, right? I didn't want there to be any confusion about who was the parent in the relationship. And as much as I wanted to have a good relationship with my child, I did not feel I was there to be her friend. I did want to be friendly, but I did want to make sure that I was seen as this responsible adult, because I did very much so take it seriously. I loved and adored this little girl, right? This is my oldest child. So I went off and as best as I could, hurried up and got out of my people's house so that I could, without that additional layer of generational influence, right? Because I was in the house with my mother and her parents, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's just too much. So I'm raising her on my own. By this time, she's about 8 years old. And, I'm coming along with still being young. I don't know, 23, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in there at this time. She's 8, 9, 10. And, I'm still figuring things out, and I'm still processing and dealing with and trying to cope with my own traumas that have been passed down to me generationally, right? And so things that I experienced, like sexual molestation and never getting therapy for it, and having all of these feelings and emotions and really pain. And not just that, but even my relationships with my own parents, them being young, raising me, and what I felt like I didn't get from them. A lot of pain that then translated into anger. That's how my pain, right? With a lot of people. If you have anger issues, you best believe that it is, right, covering some pain. It is very much attached to pain. It does not exist without it. I'm telling you. You're not just angry. Something got hit, a dog got hit and it is hollering. That is what is happening when you are angry. Okay. So I'm sorry, was that a very old reference?
No, I have never heard that in my entire life.
I haven't either, but
I don't know how old it is or where it came
good,
from,
though.
but it works. You hit a dog and now it's
Hit dogs holler. Okay, maybe I don't know.
I think you just made that up. You saw it on a quilt.
I told you I grew up with my grandparents. I see all kind of random crazy things that probably don't make sense.
They had a quilt that said that on, it was on a throw.
Hit a dog and it'll holler. It makes sense though. I mean, it makes sense.
Does. That is what they do. I mean, it's factual.
It's just one of those things that's attached to like people don't say anything or respond if it doesn't like relate to them, right? So you know what I'm saying? Like if it doesn't apply, let it fly. Well, it applied because it resonated, it hurt, and now I'm hollering about it. That's what that's all about.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Anyway. All right, y'all. That's just love. I might have to edit that out. I don't know. We'll
No,
see.
you better leave that in there. Loving you. That was hilarious. I'm like, a hit
Right.
dog started hollering. That is where anger is.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah. That's what it stands for. Anger is an extension of pain. And so I am doing my best to uh to not allow my, because I'm aware, but nowhere near to the extent that I am now, how much it was affecting me and how much I was carrying it and how poorly of a job I was doing at preventing it from affecting my parenting. Because my kid was brilliant, respectful. We had a great relationship. We talked about everything. And so when there were these moments where I felt like she didn't do what I wanted her to do or whatever it was, it would be met with a level of anger that was not justified, right? It just did not add up, right? I was very easily angered. And I would be angry at whatever it was, right? And I was someone too who didn't necessarily always address things immediately, right? It was like I would give you a pass or a time or whatever, and so not doing that allow things to build up. And by the time I'm addressing it, I almost felt like rightfully so, I had the right to now. But if the person doesn't even know that there's an issue, that's not right. Right? Like you're in your mind giving them a pass and they don't even know it. You know what I'm saying? Like for what?
Mhm.
So anyway, so all of this is going on, and my daughter is trying to be respectful, but this has been going on for a while now. So say she's 10 or 11, right? And she finally gets to the point, because the talking back thing, and that was a thing that was kind of a thing between us, is that she would kind of try to have like that last word, or like we would do the back and forth. And I was just determined to shut that down because that's like not okay. Like talking back, that's how I took it. I received it, right? And so there was a moment when I saw the pain in her eyes because I'm talking to her in a way where I'm so angry at whatever it is, but she is on the end of it, the receiving end of it. And so there's no way for her not to take it personally. It's being directed at her, right? But the pain that I saw in her eyes, and she was just like, do you realize how you're talking to me right now? And she was like, it really hurts. It really hurts that you're speaking to me this way. And she says, and I really try to be respectful, Mom. I really do. She says, but I don't understand. I don't understand how whatever it was that she did or whatever would make you talk to me like that. I'm your daughter. Ooh, child, that hit. Like I was hollering at that time, right? I was the dog hollering
Yes.
on the inside.
Yeah.
Because I was doing the hollering at that time. That's why she felt the way that she felt. But when she said that, the sting that I felt, but it really, I needed to hear that. I needed that in that moment so that I could see myself.
Yeah.
Um, and truly think about what I was doing,
Mhm.
which then also led to why I was doing it,
Yeah.
right? And where is this coming from? Why would I? And I'm like, and I basically at that moment just got quiet.